I knew she was hiding something, but I couldn't imagine how deep it went. Listen to the end. The denouement will amaze you. I don't usually come home early on Fridays, but something in my gut pulled me toward the house. Maybe it was the shift in Amanda's voice that morning, the too sweet tone layered over a tight, careful rhythm, like she was reading from a script. I remember the way she kept looking at the clock during breakfast, her eyes flicking toward the door like she was expecting someone. When I parked out front, the sun was still bright, and our driveway was empty, her car gone. But as I stepped inside, I realized she must have just arrived. Her heels were by the door, still warm from the sidewalk, and her perfume hung heavy in the air. I called her name casually, half hoping she wouldn't answer. From the corner of my eye, I saw her flinch in the hallway mirror. That's when I noticed the jacket. Navy blue, too broad in the shoulders to be hers. She shoved something into the pocket and closed the coat closet with a shaky hand, then turned toward me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I nodded and headed to the living room. On the coffee table sat an open watch box, sleek, black, and unmistakably expensive. I hadn't bought it. Amanda didn't offer an explanation, and I didn't ask. Not yet. Something in me cooled, hardened. That night, while she was in the shower, I went through the trash can in the garage. And there it was, proof wrapped in faded edges and dust, a used ticket to Las Vegas, dated from the weekend she claimed to be visiting her sister. Her name printed in bold letters. I sat in the dim garage staring at it, the buzzing fluorescent light above me crackling like it might fall. I didn't confront her, not yet. Saturday morning came with a sharp wind and the hum of our coffee machine. Amanda had already left for yoga, or so she said. I poured black coffee into a chipped mug and sat down with her laptop. I'd never snooped before, never even thought about it. But now my hands moved without hesitation. Her browser history was clean, too clean. I opened the bank's website and typed in the password she always used for everything, except this time it didn't work. I tried 2 more times. Locked out. Something must have shown on my face when she walked in, because she paused in the doorway for half a second longer than usual. By Sunday, my decision was made. She claimed she was heading to meet her old friend Heather for brunch. I didn't believe her, but I smiled and nodded as she kissed my cheek. I followed her car 2 blocks behind, weaving through suburban streets and red lights until she pulled into a restaurant downtown. She walked inside, alone at first. Then 5 minutes later, the man from the restaurant slid into the booth across from her. The same man from the photos I would receive later, the one I suspected but had never seen until now. They didn't touch, not openly. But there was something about the lean of their bodies, the half-shared laughter, the way her hand brushed his on the table like it belonged there. When I returned home, I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I opened my laptop, changed the master password, and began creating a private, encrypted archive. I labeled the folder January Project. I backed up everything. Photos, emails, screenshots. And then I rented a P.O. box under a different name. I didn't know where this road would take me, but I knew I wasn't walking it blind. Over the next few days, I watched her. I listened. She was careful, but not careful enough. I learned her habits, her tells. When she fidgeted, when she lied, she didn't suspect a thing. In the evenings after she fell asleep, I slipped into her home office and mirrored her work drive onto a flash drive small enough to hide inside my belt buckle. One night, I spent 3 hours reading emails between her and a client who wasn't a client. Words like escape, finally, and soon filled the screen in a language they thought I'd never see. She even joked about me, laughing at the life we'd built like it was a bad play she couldn't wait to walk out of. That's when I contacted a notary, quietly, efficiently. I revised the prenuptial agreement she'd forgotten about, the one her father insisted we sign back then. I filed the updated clause under infidelity, making sure it transferred all assets and accounts into my control should she ever betray our vows. The notary didn't ask questions. He stamped the document, shook my hand, and wished me luck. A week passed. Then the photos arrived, slid into a yellow envelope by a security officer I knew from college, who now worked hotel surveillance. Amanda and her lover, leaving a room through the service exit. She clung to him like she belonged in his world. I stared at the photos for a long time before printing 4 copies. One went into the archive, another into the fireproof safe. The third I folded with the amended prenup and placed in an envelope. The last one I slipped into her purse one Tuesday morning while she packed for a day at the office. 3 days passed. Nothing. No panic, no confession, no shift in her behavior. It was like she never found the envelope, or worse, she found it and didn't care. That silence told me everything. I started making moves, the quiet kind, the kind that leave no trace until it's already too late. The next morning, while Amanda still slept, I slid out of bed and slipped into the office. My boots barely made a sound on the hardwood as I opened the bottom drawer of the filing cabinet, the one she never used. I pulled out a folder marked Miscellaneous Expenses and slid in the newly notarized prenuptial revision along with a set of duplicates, one printed in bold, red font across the bottom. In effect, as of March 1st. Just a reminder to myself, it wasn't legal advice, it was a silent declaration. By the end of the week, the archive had grown fat with evidence. Screenshots of transaction logs, meal receipts, hotel stays, all of them linked to her. Some were subtle, a $47 charge to a bar 2 cities over, a rideshare pickup at 1:43 a.m., a $600 consulting deposit from an unknown account into her separate savings. Others were less subtle. On Friday, while she laughed at something on her phone in the kitchen, I went through the recycling bin. I found a crumpled receipt from a boutique hotel with champagne service checked and a signature that was almost, but not quite, hers. On Saturday, I made a stop at a mailbox rental facility 3 towns over. The girl behind the counter barely glanced at me as I filled out the form under the name Elliot G. Wren. Seemed like a good enough alias. I paid 6 months in advance. It was tucked inside a tiny strip mall between a vape shop and a place that offered psychic readings and vape repair. Oddly enough, nobody would ask questions there. That evening, while Amanda bathed, I broke into her office again. I wore latex gloves I bought from a gas station that afternoon. Cheap, thin, but good enough to avoid smudges. I used a universal USB keylogger I had ordered weeks before and plugged it into the back of her desktop tower. I waited 15 minutes. When she returned to the office, I watched her through the crack in the door as she typed in her password. Her fingers danced across the keyboard, confident, careless. She had no clue I'd just stolen every keystroke. I retrieved the keylogger an hour later and loaded the file into my own machine. Her password gave me access to her personal documents, saved logins, and even her cloud storage. It was all there. Messages with names I didn't recognize, travel confirmations for dates that didn't match what she told me, and even a PDF of her journal entries. That one surprised me. She'd titled it Rehearsal Draft. I read it twice. One entry caught me in the gut. N is just predictable. He makes me feel safe, which I used to think was good, but safety feels like a cage now. I need more than weekends at the lake and reruns of The Office. I need fire. I want to be seen. She wanted fire? I almost laughed. She had no idea what kind of fire I could become. I sent a copy of the document to my analyst friend Dan, a cybersecurity specialist with a few very unorthodox hobbies. I didn't explain much. Just told him to mask my IP and post excerpts on a professional blogging site under a pseudonym, integrated into a piece about emotional infidelity and workplace boundaries. I told him to be subtle but specific, include enough detail that only Amanda would recognize it. I also asked him to timestamp the post as coming from an Eastern European IP address, something out of her jurisdiction but traceable enough to look like a disgruntled intern arrival. The post went live Monday morning. Within hours, her LinkedIn notifications started going off. Clients withdrew. Collaborators stopped responding. One of her partners, Derek, a wiry guy with a shaved head who used to bring wine to our barbecues, dropped out of their project. I found his resignation email in her inbox. He wrote that, "Recent revelations have cast doubt on your discretion and long-term vision." I knew what that meant. It meant she was toxic now. It meant her carefully curated image was cracking. 2 days later, I filed an anonymous report to the IRS, attaching selected documents from her company's financial records. Just enough to hint at undeclared income and potential offshore transfers. She had no idea I'd been tracking her accounts for months. I slipped the supporting documents into a manila envelope and mailed it from a city 40 miles north. I use gloves. I never touch the documents with bare hands. No fingerprints, no trail. By Thursday, Amanda's panic had begun to show. She called her bank, her partner, her sister. She cried on the phone behind the closed office door and kept checking the mailbox like it owed her something. She asked if I noticed anything strange. I shrugged and told her it was probably just stress. She didn't sleep that night. I did. The next afternoon, I got the call. Her company was under audit, the federal kind, real suits, real subpoenas. She was being summoned to explain discrepancies in her firm's revenue and partner distributions. Amanda didn't tell me that, of course. I learned it from a friend in the financial district, someone who owed me a favor. She came home like a storm cloud, kicking her heels into the wall and snapping at the oven timer when it beeped. She didn't want dinner. She wanted control. That's when the lawyer's envelope arrived. She didn't say a word about it, just slid it onto the kitchen counter one night and walked away. I opened it alone, long after she had gone to bed. Inside was her request for divorce. Cold, clinical, stripped of affection. But it also included a note scrawled in the margins. I don't want to fight. Let's just split custody and move on. Split custody? She was offering to share our son like he was a chore list. I smiled at that. The next day, I sent my reply through my own attorney. My condition was simple. I would only agree to the divorce if I was granted full custody of our son. No compromises, no joint weekends, no alternating holidays. I wasn't doing this to hurt her. I was doing it to protect him. He didn't need to grow up watching his mother spiral in and out of affairs in moral gray zones. He needed stability. He needed clarity. He needed to never know how deep this wound went. I didn't hear back for 4 days. The silence didn't bother me. I spent the time gathering more. More files, more recordings, more nails for the quiet coffin I was building around her career and reputation. And then, out of nowhere, she asked to talk. She wanted to meet for coffee, just the two of us. I said nothing. Let her wonder. Let her stew. The final hearing was coming, and I was just getting started. Amanda didn't go to work the next morning. Instead, she drifted from room to room, restless and distracted, avoiding my gaze and any mention of what had unfolded over the past week. She cleaned surfaces that didn't need it, stared too long at our son sleeping, checked the mail every hour like she was waiting for an answer that would never come. The silence between us grew heavy, but I didn't break it. I let her stew in it. By the third day, she started deleting her online presence. Blog posts, archived newsletters, social media profiles. Her name began disappearing from company rosters. Clients quietly cut ties. Amanda's professional image, carefully built and curated, crumbled under the weight of the anonymous leaks Dan and I released. Each one laced with subtle details only those closest to her would recognize. Travel dates, veiled phrases from her journal, corporate missteps masked as bonuses. It was like watching a building collapse in slow motion, one floor at a time. The real blow came when she opened the certified envelope from the federal audit team. She didn't even pretend to hide her panic. Her hands shook. That evening, her lawyer contacted mine. Amanda was ready to finalize everything. She didn't even fight the condition I set, full custody of our son. But it wasn't over. I kept combing through the flash drive I'd cloned from her office machine. And there, buried deep in a folder labeled Media Temp, was a single video, grainy, dated a few months after our anniversary. Amanda sat alone in a hotel room, visibly drunk, laughing softly into the camera. I didn't know who she was speaking to, but her words carved through me. If he ever finds out, maybe he'll finally leave. Honestly, the kid might not even be his. That line shattered something inside me. I sent the clip to my attorney. At the next court hearing, I placed the USB drive in a small envelope and handed it to the judge. Amanda's face went pale. The judge watched it in silence, then calmly postponed the case for 6 months and ordered a paternity test. She didn't even try to speak after that. The results came in 3 weeks later. I wasn't the father. I didn't cry. I didn't demand answers. I simply signed the final documents. Amanda lost custody entirely. Her visitation rights were revoked after the court cited deception and instability. She wasn't just out of my life. She was out of our son's. Within a month, I sold the house, liquidated the remnants of our shared life, and moved out of state. I bought a quiet property near the coast, converted an old shack into a wooden boat workshop, and started over. Nobody knew my story, no one asked. And that was perfect. Clients came in slow waves. One of them, John, left a thick envelope after his boat was finished. A generous tip. I waited until he was gone to open it. Folded bills enough to surprise me. I stood there in the fading light of the shop, cedar dust still clinging to my arms, and felt something I hadn't in months. Release. I turned on the radio, made dinner in the back of the shop, and watched the horizon darken as gulls screamed over the water. The past was out there somewhere, behind me, and this time I wasn't following it. The courtroom was colder than I remembered. Amanda sat 2 rows ahead, her hair tied back tight, dressed in muted grays, trying to look composed. But I saw her hands trembling. I hadn't spoken to her in weeks. She'd sent a few vague emails after the test results came in. Talk of mistakes, confusion, forgiveness. I never replied. There was nothing left to say. My attorney slid a small folder across the table to the judge. Inside was a final exhibit, a recording Amanda had unknowingly made herself, this one less dramatic, more deliberate. It was a self-recorded video from months earlier, probably meant for someone she trusted. In it, she looked directly into the lens, visibly distressed. She said, "I just want a clean break. He deserves better than lies. He was a good father, even if he wasn't the real one." It was enough, more than enough. The judge didn't deliberate long. Custody was granted to me, fully, permanently. Visitation was suspended pending appeal, though none was filed. Amanda sat frozen in her seat, her eyes dry but vacant. For the first time in months, she didn't look angry or manipulative. She looked small, hollow. I walked out of that building without looking back. That afternoon, I drove straight to the notary's office, signed the last of the asset separation papers, and wired the sale proceeds from our house into a personal trust. The final balance zeroed her out completely. No shared assets, no alimony, just silence. She tried once more after that. An unmarked envelope left on the doorstep of my shop one late evening. Inside was a photo of our son, a short note in her handwriting. "I miss him. Please let me see him." Just once. I stood with it in my hand for a long time. Then I fed it into the wood stove beside the workbench and watched it burn. I never answered her. Months passed. The shop grew. Word of mouth traveled fast in coastal towns. I got steady work, sailboat repairs, handcrafted paddleboards, even a commission from a retired Navy officer to restore a 1950s hull from his father's old fleet. I woke early, worked late, and filled the in-between hours with things that mattered. Small things, quiet things. My son adapted faster than I did. He asked fewer questions than I expected, maybe because part of him had already sensed the truth long before the paperwork confirmed it. We kept a simple routine. Breakfast at sunrise, school drop-offs, dinners on the porch with the sea breeze coming in through the screen. I started sleeping through the night again. Then came a moment, quiet and almost laughably small, that told me I had finally stepped beyond the storm. It was a Thursday. I had just finished sanding the hull of a river skiff. A new client came in, older man, gruff but kind. He paid in cash and left a $50 tip folded between the receipts. I thanked him, shook his hand, and turned on the shop radio. An old Motown track came on, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like I was carrying something broken. I felt light. Later that night, while dinner simmered on the stove and my son worked on a puzzle beside me, I looked around the little workshop we called home. Wooden beams, salt-crusted windows, the smell of varnish and time and old oak. No photos of Amanda, no reminders. Only the life I'd built with care and quiet precision. And just like that, I realized something. The revenge had never been in the destruction. It wasn't in the photos or the audit or the custody win. It was here, in the stillness. In the fact that I had walked away clean while she remained buried in the wreckage of what she thought she could control. She set the fire. I built the exit. She tried to twist the truth. I replaced it with fact. She took my trust and crushed it in her hands. And I turned every fragment into something stronger than before. Let her burn. Let the memory of her turn to smoke and vanish. I was already standing on the other side of the flames, and the door was shut behind me. That's all for now, folks. Thank you for being with me today and listened. And if you liked my story, please subscribe, hit the like button, and comment below what you think about all this, and what would you do if you were me. Also, don't forget to check my other stories in description below.